Last week, I talked about a new you in a new year. If you missed it, please go back and listen to episode 92. Today, I want to talk about something we all need every day, grace, which is undeserved favor freely given by God. There's a popular song known around the world that has been sung at U.S. presidential inaugurations, commemorations, and memorials, and by legendary singers such as Aretha Franklin and Elvis Presley. You might know the song I'm talking about. That song is called Amazing Grace. You've probably heard or sung the lyrics of this song, especially the famous first verse. And it goes, Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now am found, was blind, but now I see. This verse and the entire song really speak to the grace or favor of God and how He lavishes us with favor we didn't earn and we don't deserve. Scripture says we are saved by grace alone, through faith and not works, so that no one can boast. The change that God creates in us when we surrender our lives to Him is so drastic, it's so new, it's so different, so radical and life-changing that only God alone can take credit for it. It is not something we could have made happen for ourselves, even if we tried. God's grace makes these life-altering transformations happen, as is the case with the author of the song Amazing Grace. John Newton, a slave owner who trafficked and enslaved Africans to America and tortured his slaves in the slave ships, wrote the words to Amazing Grace after nearly dying in a shipwreck during a bad storm. Newton called out to God to spare his life and promised to devote his life to God if he survived the storm. Well, he lived to tell the story, even though the ship barely survived, and Newton kept his word to God. He became a pastor. He stopped slave trading and wrote and presented the song Amazing Grace to his congregation on New Year's Day, January 1st, 1773. John Newton's spiritual conversion is reminiscent of the Apostle Paul's switch from persecuting the church to living for God and writing most of what we now know as the New Testament of the Bible. Because when we have a real encounter with God, we are compelled to change. God's presence is a powerful force that confronts and transforms anything that's unholy. That is why the Bible calls Him a consuming fire. And as imperfect people with a propensity to sin, we need God's grace to even stand in His presence. The next three verses, I want to share those with you, of the song Amazing Grace are as follows. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. How precious did that grace appear the hour I first believed. The Lord hath promised good to me, His word my hope secures. His will my shield and portion be as long as life endures. When we've been there 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun, we've no less days to sing God's praise than when we first begun. Grace is a thread throughout time in this song as Newton talks about the past, the present, and the future. I read that he was inspired by 1 Chronicles 17, a chapter that talks about the past, the present, and the future of King David. This song is really a great reminder of how we need God's grace in all seasons of our lives. Because grace is what has got us to this point. Grace is what we need currently, and it's what we need to go forward. The bottom line is we need God's love. We need His power. We need His mercy. But we also need His grace every single day. Amazing grace that saved a wretch like you and me. If today's message about grace piqued your interest and you want to dig a little deeper or go a little further, please look in the description box or show notes and download the free post-episode reflection activity I prepared for you to personalize today's message and apply it to your life. That is all I have for today. Thanks for listening to today's episode. Bye for now.